So today I'm going to talk about elections and voting. In 2020, Trump lost the election. After he lost the election, he went on and pushed the lie that the election were stolen from him. He pushed the lie so much that on January 6th, a group of his followers stormed the Capitol and were chanting, "Hang my pens." Their idea was to stop the certification of the elections. In their mind, they thought that if the electors, the slate of electors, will see that they storm it and remove my pens and hang my pens, that they will get Trump back into power. Trump during that time, they motivate, he pushed his electors, this group of people, to do what he wanted, and it wasn't until 3 hours later that he told them to stop, to go home. Later on, he of course left the White House. And after he left the White House, he continued to push the lie that he lost the election, the voting was rigged, and that there were a lot of fraud in the elections. In 2024, state of Colorado and the state of Maine decided to take Trump out of the candidate list because of the insurrection. They said that the Amendment 14 of the Constitution said that if you were an insurrectionist, you would not be able to hold an office of the United States. You could not be, you could not work for the federal government. Maybe I'm pushing it too much. They say you could not be an officer, could not be a legislator, and so on and so on. The request in Colorado came from from a couple of Republican representatives. So the Republican group in Colorado, this four people in Colorado, did not want the head of the Republican Party as a candidate in their elections. The question went all the way to the Colorado Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, "Yes, you are right. Trump committed an insurrection. He's an insurrectionist. He cannot be there." The Supreme Court of the U.S. then said, "Hey, let's look at your decision." And they finally said, they said, yeah, the state does not has the power to implement the Amendment 14 of the Constitution. That is a federal power. And you're a state, there's a separation of powers here. As much as I don't like it, yeah, Supreme Court was right. It's a separation of powers. Can't do anything about it. But then the court did something that I did not like because they said that power is in Congress. Congress is the one that has to enforce it. And when you read the amendment, there's a portion there that says that if you're an insurrectionist, you can hold an office if two-thirds of Congress says that you can hold that office, pretty much lift the restriction. Doesn't say the other way. It says that Congress needs to find that you're an insurrectionist. They say that the enforcement power is from somewhere else and so on and so on. In the end, the Supreme Court of the United States to the Supreme Court of Colorado decision, and they had the question right there. If this is something that needs to be resolved, it will be resolved in court in the end. And the question was right there. Was Trump an insurrectionist? And the Supreme Court of the US said nothing of that and didn't even look at that question. Instead of simply going and saying, "Did you commit these acts?" They had the whole file from the Supreme Court, all of the facts and all of the evidence that the Supreme Court had. So what it is. I think they were saying the Congress that Congress needs to set up some kind of law or process to find if a person committed an insurrection. And then they can look at that law and I don't know, decide. I guess that's their way of thinking. But to me, it's clear you're an insurrectionist. And um, I think the Supreme Court of Colorado used a congressional report, which again, congressional report, it's in there. Anyways, that's what they did. Trump got elected. He didn't say that the election in which he was elected was fraudulent. He was saying it beforehand, but he did not complain about the results that got him elected. Elections are important. I think elections are one of the most effective ways that people can take the power that they have and invest that in a group of people that are selected to manage the government, to manage their collective power, to decide what laws are we going to follow, how are we going to administer our government, how are we going to deal with the countries around us. Voting is that power, and it's in everyone's hand. I think it's one of the better ways to manage that power. I don't think that having an emperor, a king, pharaoh, any of those things is a good way of having that power. In the end, the collective power of the people is the one that creates the government. And the collective power of voting is the best ways to represent that power. The power of a government comes from the people. And if it comes from the people need a way to make that power known. And there are several ways to do it. And those ways to do it need to be available to them as much as possible. Because if you have many ways of getting that power there, the better it is for government because it will be much more representative of that power. Throughout the years, we have seen what happens when government is not representative. When this country was created, our election power was only in the hand of a few, couple of wealthy white men. Then that moved to white men. Then it moved to men, including free black people. And then it moved to women. And this is where we are today. Now we understand that everyone needs to have access to that power. It cannot be restricted to anyone. And I think even today, some convicts have some ex convicts have their voting rights restricted. Again, voting needs to go to everyone so everyone can have the power, so everyone can affect government, so that everyone can have a say in how they are governed. We have seen, or we saw throughout those years, why it's important that that power is available to everyone. There were many efforts to curtail that power. Things like taxes, um, tests, like reading tests and so on, things that to me, they don't make any sense at all. I can hear the person that's put out for election, can understand what they're doing. So I can go and select the one. I don't need to have any of these restrictions so that I can go and elect a person. I can select a person that is going to represent my portion of the power in how I get governed. So if I were president, I will start by reinforcing the importance of voting. Everyone needs access to voting. Everyone needs free access to voting. I will try to change some of the ways in which we vote today because I think that primaries of a few states in the end dictate what happens to everyone in the rest of the country. I will look to do something more like proportional voting, simply because I don't like that two or three primaries hold power over everyone. I think there are two major ways in which the electoral votes are set up in the US. The first one, I think there are some states that do proportional voting. Better example is if a state has 100 electors and the popular vote in that state says that they want 60% for one candidate and 40% for the other, that's how the electors will divide their 100 votes, 60 for one, 40 for the other. But there are some other states in which all of the electors will go to the winner of the popular vote. So again, if they have 100 electors and the popular vote goes 60-40 for one candidate, instead of having that division of 60-40, a whole 100 will go to the other one. And I don't think that's appropriate. So I will try to encourage different the states to have that proportional voting because that way, now the primaries of one or two places are not the important one. Everyone will be important. No one will be left behind. No one will feel like doesn't matter if they vote or not. I think it will also take some of the differences in primaries in which is mostly sown the people that are really for one candidate or one not one candidate for one party to vote. So they will go and try to get their own candidate. But if the elections all of a sudden are proportional, now you may not think as much as is that person from the party that I like or not, and would be much more into does that person represent my way, my feeling how we should be governed? Is that person advancing it? And not really about whether is the party or not. I think that that will be a good push into some of this craziness about elections. But voting, access to voting is also important. One of those lies that Trump was pushing and is pushing is about mail ballots. Mail ballots are great for people that cannot get to the voting center for whatever reason. It's too far. I gotta work. I gotta take care of kids. I'm sick and I have limited movement. I'm afraid of the environment in which we are today, and I don't want to go there because there's people that are around kind of voting centers with guns and all those kind of things. Those are the things that make voting great because now I can set up my vote. Elections are managed differently by the whole, by all the state. There are 15 different rules of elections. They can set up how far from the voting day they can get it. They all can say, if your vote is marked by the voting date, then we can accept it however many days after that. And it comes. It'll be easy. It won't be a whole problem with counting the votes. In the end, most of this is electronic, anyways. The people will get the mail-in ballot. They will look at the validity of that ballot, and then they will put it into the electronic counter, and off they go. Election day, usually the elections are called by the Associated Press. They've been doing it for many, 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 many years. They send people out to all of the voting, all the states, and then they start tallying and figuring out through math and statistics who gets to win at the end of the night. Some of them are able to call the same night. Some of them they're able to call the day after, and some of them they're able to call a couple of days after. So the in the end, the elections office of the state end up certifying the election and the numbers and publishing the official numbers, and that's how we end up doing this stuff. So we know how to do this. We got the equipment. We got the technology to do it. That is not a problem at all. The other thing we can act the other way that we can increase voting participation, it's simply have a national holiday. So let's make voting day, every 4 years for presidential elections, we make that a federal holiday. And that will increase the time that people have to go there. They can simply take that day, go, do their little vote, and enjoy the rest of the day. I don't think that's too onerous. It's not too expensive. A, I don't think that is too difficult to implement. We can do it. It will be a national holiday. It will maybe help people get to the ballot easier. It may allay some of the fears of people about what is strange or what is not a strange. Why are so many people voting by all of these alternative methods? It's not a way to stop those alternative methods. It's in addition to those other methods, but it's a way to make sure that voting is available to everyone, that everyone can access that little bit of power that they have so that they can be governed the way that they expect.